On today's Locked On Jayhawks, trouble for KU. They lose their Big 12 opener for the first time in over 30 years.
You are Locked On Jayhawks, your daily podcast on the Kansas Jayhawks. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's going on? Derek Johnson here. This is Locked On Jayhawks. Thanks for making it your first listen every day. We're free and available anywhere you get your podcast, and you can find us on our YouTube page where you can like and subscribe to the show. On today's edition of LOJ, we are recapping the Kansas-West Virginia game. The Jayhawks lose for the first time in their Big 12 opener, and it's like 33 seasons. It's an unbelievable streak that comes to an end here in this one, and a lot of not good for Kansas, a lot of not good that you were hoping would be better, and now a lot of questions moving forward. There were some positives, Zeke, Mayo, and Flory, Bidunga. We'll break it all down. We'll get to game awards and then what's next for KU on this episode of the show. So Kansas falls by 1 point to West Virginia, and 62-61 the final score, certainly a lower scoring game. This was a West Virginia team that was without two of their starters. This is a West Virginia team that had arrived in Lawrence at like 4 a.m, according to a report from Jeff Goodman. They had all sorts of travel issues getting into the game. They had every reason in the world to lose this game, and they did not. Now, maybe some of that stuff contributed to Kansas being able to come back into the game. Maybe they were a little bit more tired at the end of the game. But point being, Kansas should have won this game to begin with. They were like 12.5, 13.5 point favorites coming in. I think it was 12.5 or something, and then it moved to 13.5 after the report came out. Kansas had no business losing this game, and they did. And it is just a continuation of Kansas. I think this was their 12th or 13th loss of the calendar year of 2024, which is pretty incredible for a Bill Self team. I mean, right now, this would be the first time Bill Self, if the season ended today, which it doesn't, fortunately, the Kansas finished outside the top 10 in KenPom back-to-back seasons since his first 2 seasons at Kansas. So you're basically talking 20 years. It was a very similar loss to the Missouri loss. Like, it was a horrible first half. You came out where you couldn't do anything right. You came out where you had no energy to start the game, and you got your butt whooped in the first half. And then the second half, you looked a lot closer to the team you would hope to be and played a lot better. But unfortunately, because of the hole you dug yourself in, you weren't able to overcome that. It's kind of like, the team a couple of years ago did find themselves in a lot of holes, but they came back and had all these crazy wins, including a game on December 31st, the team with Jalen Wilson 2 years ago. They were down, I think, 14-15 at half to Oklahoma State, ended up coming back, winning from behind. This team is like that, except they're not getting the wins. They're just coming closer, and then they're falling at the very end. And I know people want to point out the end of the game that, okay, you have the backcourt violation go against you, maybe some nickel dimers that go against you. Maybe you didn't like the foul call that goes on Flory on the pump fake, where it's kind of the offensive player initiating contact. That is normally a foul that is called, though. But I can understand the not liking the rule of it. The no call on KJ, which we didn't get to see a replay of because ESPN Plus sucks. All fair points. But I don't like blaming the refs. Like, there's 1,000 calls in a game that could go your way, could go against the other team. KU was up 21-6 in free throw attempts, and KU's been like a really bad team at getting to the free throw line this year. So they lost for a billion other reasons, and many of them are because this team has very real issues. Can we just start real quick? What the heck on the last play? So there's only 1.9 seconds. You're down by a point. It's not looking good. But my initial thought, KU had a timeout. Bill Self is so good, out of timeouts and out of sideline plays and all that stuff, was that, okay, they're going to throw the ball down the court. I think they did something like this I want to say it was against Oklahoma. It was the regular season finale. It was a game that Kansas didn't have to. They had already clinched the Big 12, and they ended up losing the game. But they ended up throwing the ball down the court and tossed it to Frank Mason. I think he got fouled. He hit 3 free throws, went to overtime, or maybe Buddy Hield or somebody hit a game-winning shot. This was maybe in the 2014 or 2015 season. I thought it was going to be something similar to that. You throw the ball down the court, he tosses it out, or you throw the ball down the court, somebody catches the ball and immediately takes his timeout. And then you're left with 1 second to basically just find somebody for a catch and shoot opportunity. I thought that's what they were going to do. And I thought even in the aftermath, after it happened, when KJ Adams, you had Hunter Dickinson, who is a good outlet and deep ball passer, makes the catch, I thought the play was going to be for him to take a timeout. Turns out in the postgame, and maybe this was just Bill Self, I don't know, covering for his guy. Like maybe it was supposed to be a timeout and it just didn't happen. Either it was forgotten or the ref didn't hear it or something. And Bill Self was just not wanting to throw KJ Adams under the bus. Like that's entirely possible. But based on the post-game comments from Bill Self, it turns out that was not the case, that they were like, oh yeah, we thought we could get KJ in a one-on-one and we were worried about somebody else. KJ Adams is not this like dynamic offensive player. And especially in that situation with a second to go where it's probably going to be a jump shot. That is not his game at all. And in addition to that, KJ Adams was having a bad game. He was not doing anything on offense. So, like, I am perplexed by that at the end of the game, which almost makes it worse in the explanation. But the struggles, the problems for KU, like, it is an amalgamation of a bad fitting roster, right? Like, you basically ran it back when there were real fit questions. And I do say that, like, it's almost bad. We'll get into the too big basketball, I guess, because like in some sense, too big basketball doesn't work in today's day and age. In other sense, too big basketball does work. And I think you actually saw proof that too big basketball can work when the Flory Hunter lineup was in there. But like, it's just a bad fitting roster when you look at everybody together. It's not necessarily that like some of these players individually are good players or are good for a specific role, but when you put it all together, it's kind of a bad fitting roster. And then you have other players who maybe are good players, but they're not good enough to not play with high intensity, that you don't see high intensity in the first half, and you see the end result being in a hole too big to overcome. You have rotation issues. You have trouble figuring out what your rotation should be, what your best lineup should be. And some of your players that you were hoping to be your best players, A, haven't earned the trust of Bill Self, B, haven't played as much as they would have hoped or you would have hoped, C, when they have played, like, I know there's been a lot of conversation about, okay, Rylan Griffin and AJ Storr need to be playing more, and I do agree with that. And yes, should KJ's minutes be closer to 20 than they are 30? Yes, I agree with both those things. I'm not disagreeing with any of those. But also at the same point in time, did you know AJ Storr and Rylan Griffin came into this game averaging a collective like 41 minutes per game? Right? That's not a huge number, but that's still both of them averaging over 20 minutes per game. It's not like they're not playing at all. Like they're getting opportunities to try to prove what they're doing, even if it is a bit tighter of a leash than you would expect or maybe you would hope for. And that's all fair criticism to say maybe the leash should be a little bit loosened. But my point is, it's also got to be hard for a coach to see these guys play minutes and not do anything. And so I guess part of my point is that it really isn't just one thing. Like I know some people just want to say, oh, it's just KJ Adams, or it's just the transfers not doing well, or it's just Bill Self, or it's all of these things. It's a lot of things, right? And so that's almost worse, I guess, because you can't just pinpoint one thing. Like what I'm saying is basically, I don't think this is as easy as one solution. I don't think this is as easy to say, if that changes, they're okay. I think it's a lot of different things have to change. And it's not good enough right now. It feels embarrassing, feels disappointing. And it feels like it keeps happening. And, I guess on the bright side, like Zeke Mayo continues to be an absolute stud for you. Like that was really cool to see what he did. And it's really cool when a team, it feels like is lethargic or without energy, when you do have a guy like Zeke Mayo, who I think is showing a lot of passion, showing a lot of energy when he is out there. And obviously he was great today, 27 points. He was awesome and continued to progress and getting used to his time at KU. I thought Flory Bidunga was absolutely great for KU. Obviously, it was unfortunate he had the foul at the end of the game, but prior to that, like he had been amazing. And that was very interesting that, despite all the questions about the lack of spacing, about playing KJ next to Hunter Dickinson or KJ next to Flory Bidunga, instead of when it got to a point where it was like, okay, this is getting out of hand, like we need to do something. We need to try some other lineup. Instead of Bill Self being like, yeah, we're going to play a small ball lineup and we're going to try to outspeed them and we're going to try to hit shots. He was like, no, I'm going to double down. I'm going to play even bigger. You thought KJ Adams and Hunter Dickinson wasn't enough spacing? Try, I'll raise you one Flory Bidunga and Hunter Dickinson. But it actually worked. It worked in a very real way. It changed the game. Kansas got back in the game with that lineup. And I think that was a real criticism from this game too. Kansas got back in the game because of that lineup, and yet all of a sudden over the last, whatever it was, minute and a half, 2 minutes of the game, they go back to like KJ Adams and Flory or KJ Adams and Hunter, and it was like, wait, wasn't this other lineup the one that was working? Why'd you change it up? But it did work with Flory and Hunter, and actually it does make a little bit of sense to me. If you look around college basketball, there are teams being successful with two big basketball, right? It hasn't worked for Kansas this past year and a half because the two bigs, it just doesn't really make as much sense. There are natural flaws of playing two bigs. And those natural flaws typically are going to be, you're not going to be as speedy on the defensive end. You're going to struggle guarding teams who can really space it or three-point shoot. Maybe there's going to be a little less spacing on your offensive end of the court. Like, those are very real criticisms and flaws that two big basketball in today's day and age can have. But the idea of playing two big basketball is that some of the positives you're going to hope are going to outweigh some of the negatives, that you're going to get more rebounds. You're going to get more possessions on the offensive end because you're going to win the rebound battle on the offensive and defensive glass. You're going to get easier buckets at the rim. You're going to be able to score on the inside a little bit more, and you're going to have more interior defense. And so the problem is, as much as I love KJ, he tries so hard. I don't think this is like it's just a fit on the team problem, right? Because KJ is a good defender and a good dunker. He's a good passer, but he's not a post scorer, right? He's not a good rebounder, and he's not a rim protecting defender, right? He's more of a, I'm going to guard you one-on-one type defender. And so for Kansas, normally if you're going to play two bigs, you're saying, okay, I'm giving up this to be better at rebounding, to be better at inside, presence on offense and defense. Unfortunately, when it's KJ Hunter, you're not getting the positives of that. You're just getting really the negatives. It's just not a good fit, whether it's not a good fit by having Hunter or not a good fit by having KJ, right? I think you could make it work with one of the two. I just don't think it works as well with both of them, right? It's not necessarily an indictment on both players. It's an indictment on the fit of having both of them on the roster at the same time. But it works with Flory because guess what? Flory is a good rebounder. Flory is a good rim protector, right? He can be a weak side rim protector to help make up for some of the deficiencies of Hunter Dickinson on the defensive end of the court. I think you look at it and it's like, well, with Flory and Hunter, it just, you get the benefits of playing two big basketball as opposed to just getting the negatives. Now, what does that mean moving forward? I don't know, because we've seen Self go to a player. We've seen Bill Self go to a lineup in a specific game, and it means nothing for the next game. And the fact that he still closed with KJ Adams and that he was the one taking the last shot kind of is telling to be like, no, he's still going to go with KJ and he's still going to play with big minutes. Maybe we see it a tad more with Flory and Hunter, but my guess is it's more of like the same old in future lineups. It definitely feels like to me, it would be better if KJ was playing closer to 20 minutes per game than he would be closer to 30, which is what he kind of has been. But again, even with the Flory Hunter lineup doing good work, which honestly, I would like to see that maybe even be the starting lineup next game. Wouldn't hate it. Although we saw a post-game comment from Bill Self mentioning possibly even going with KJ, Flory, and Hunter, which I don't necessarily want to go that far. But again, like that didn't close the game, and even in a game where KJ was struggling. So I don't think it's going to happen, even if maybe that's my opinion, right? So bottom line, I don't really think this is a Big 12 title contender. I don't really think this is a Final Four contender. Maybe if they make a couple changes in the lineup, maybe if they make a couple changes with some of the talent playing better, maybe this or that, it can come together and they can figure it out. I'm not saying it's impossible for it to happen. I'm just saying at this stage of the season, it's not what they are. But at the very least, I come away from this like thinking even higher of Zeke Mayo. I come away from this thinking even higher about Flory Bidunga. So I guess at least that's good. And props to West Virginia, who feels like they probably should have had a win in Allen Fieldhouse by now. Like they've had so many close calls. So I guess, tip of the cap to them for finally getting it done. All right, let's continue on to Game Awards. What's next for KU next? This episode of the show is brought to you by Game Time. I love going to live events. It can be sports, music, theater, comedy. One of my favorite opportunities is to go to the live events with other people too. And it's a perfect time of year that you can bring others to one of those events because there's so many different things going on right now. There's basketball games going on. There's football playoffs going on. There's bowl games going on, right? You might be attending a concert or a sporting event. And with Game Time, they've made it even easier to get tickets for your favorite events with their new feature called Game Time Picks. This feature filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. With Game Time Picks, I found amazing deals and can even see the view from my seat before buying. The super deal was particularly impressive. They offer great seats at unbeatable prices, plus the app's all-in pricing shows the total cost up front with no surprise fees at checkout. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game time. Thank you for making Locked On Jayhawks your first listen every day. Check out some of our other shows. Bill Self talking about Darren Peterson being the best recruit they've ever had. Certainly hope so, because this season not looking too hot. So they're going to need a big year to bounce back next season. Okay, game trophies from this one. Let's talk about best moment. I think in general, Flory's second half play was a good moment for this team. I also think for a team that struggled to get to the free throw line, seeing Zeke Mayo get there that often, those are both good moments from this game overall. If you're talking about individual plays, the Zeke Mayo 3 after he fakes, gets the guy to blow by, takes like a dribble and then shoots a 3. That made it 59-56. That was cool. The Hunter offensive rebound and put back to make it 59-58. And then the Zeke Mayo layup and one, the foul that cut it to 1 on the free throw and then ties it on the free throw. Those were the best moments of the game. Unfortunately, the worst moments of the game, it was when you were down 1. Diggy Coit gets a really good steal, passes to KJ. Instead of him, going out with it and resetting the offense, he goes up for a contested layup, misses it badly, and then you end up pointless there. That was a bad moment. Then the last shot of the game, that was a bad moment. Flory fouling Javon Small, that was a bad moment. The whole first half, that was horrendous. The second 3 by Joe Yesufu, that one felt like a dagger. Obviously, Kansas ended up coming back from that and ended up still having a chance, but that one almost felt like it was going to be the dagger. And for him to, of all people, to make him when it's I wonder how many games Joe Yesufu hit 2 threes for Kansas in a game. You know what I mean? That was brutal. And then the Javon Small, where he almost traveled, stayed with it, then canned this really hard deep contested 2 from the baseline to make it 59-53. Those were all bad moments, but I think the worst moment has to be, to me, I don't know. I guess the last shot is the one that resonates with people the most, but honestly, it's the one where Diggy Coit got the steal and KJ missed the layup. That one, it felt rushed, it felt unneeded, it felt unnecessary, and it felt like it could have been a huge play after Diggy gets you the steal, and you have all this momentum, and it's like Zeke Mayo and stuff running the show, and he doesn't get an opportunity there. Our next award is the 8 Too Many Holiday Treats Award. That goes to Hunter Dickinson. That might be a little mean. I don't know. He came out really slow from the game. It looked super lethargic. There were a few rebounds he just didn't go for. There was the one where it just popped in his arms and it just went out of bounds off him and he didn't try to re-get it and was pointing that it was the other way. That was weird. He had that one hook shot where it just flew out of his hands. Really slow on defense. They were exploiting that and just getting easy buckets on the inside by taking advantage of him in screens or raising his line. It was a really bad start for Hunter Dickinson. He wasn't really giving you anything. He was kind of getting abused on defense in addition to being lethargic. And I don't know, maybe a bit of a lazy start. Obviously, he ended up with a double-double, ended up producing better from then on. And once he was in there with Flory Bidunga, I think it helped him on the defensive end because Flory became kind of the rover, the guy who can make up for things at the back end. And I think that helped out Hunter. I think that helped out KU. So I do hope we get to see that lineup a little bit more moving forward. Why is it so non-productive award? That goes to the transfers minus Zeke Mayo. Zeke Mayo was unbelievable again, 27 points for KU. But the rest of the transfers, Shaquille Moore, Diggy Coit, AJ Storr, Rylan Griffin, those 4 players combined played 46 minutes. Those 4 players combined in 46 minutes had 0 points on 0 for 5 shooting. Now, I will say for Diggy Coit, he did have that good steal. Diggy Coit actually ended up with a plus 12 in the box score despite not really putting much up. So I don't know if he was just out there providing good defense and spacing and ball handling, or if he just happened to be a ride for a good part of when KU was coming back from behind. But still, and you look at, Bill Self's comments from the postgame when he was asked about what Rylan Griffin and AJ Storr provided, and he was basically nothing. And that was after he mentioned both guys having good practices, especially AJ Storr, who started the game for you. And that is about as discouraging as anything, that you did get good practice from him, but it didn't matter into the game. And this is where things become very difficult for me because on one hand, as we discussed earlier, should KJ be playing less minutes? Yes, probably. Should Rylan Griffin and AJ Storr be getting a bigger leash for when they make mistakes, they stay in the game? Yes, probably as well. But I can understand when you look at AJ Storr and Rylan Griffin combined in this game, had 27 minutes played. They scored 3 points on 1 of 5 shooting. They had 0 assists to 1 turnover. They didn't do anything in this game. So you look at it and it's would you like them to get a bigger leash? Yes, absolutely. And in theory, is giving them a bigger leash, does it give them more confidence to play better? It's entirely possible. But also, if you're a head coach and you try to live on a ideal of they have to earn it, what have they done on the court when they are getting that playing time? Which, again, it's not 60 minutes a game, they're still averaging both over 20 minutes per game. At least they were coming into the game. Maybe it's around 19, 20 after this game. And they haven't earned it to this point. So it's like, yes, you want them to play more, but it's also the other switch of this is like, but if you're the head coach, you can understand why you wouldn't have that trust. I guess what I'm saying is going back to all this, like, I know a lot of people want to blame Bill Self for this, and I do think, like, I agree that you should have stuck with the Flory Hunter lineup at the end of the game, and I don't like the play going to KJ at the end of the game, like, all that, totally fair. I don't know that there is a solution, right? I don't think it's as easy to say if you just play this lineup, it'll work, or if you just play this guy more, it'll work. I think there's a lot more problems for KU than just that. But yeah, not a lot of production there. Offensive MVP goes to Zeke Mayo, 27 points, 6 of 13 shooting, 13 of 13 on free throws, hit some clutch ones as well. He was awesome for KU. It feels like they're wasting some of the good opportunities that he's provided them, though. Defensive MVP, Flory Bidunga, he changed the game on the defensive end of the court. Kansas offense was definitely a lot better in the second half, but, this wasn't a game known for the KU offense. They still scored in the low 60s. They were able to make some defensive stops to go on that run. And Flory ended up with 11 rebounds in 17 minutes. Unbelievable rebounding and 10 defensive rebounds in 17 minutes. He had a huge impact coming in to patrol the paint next to Hunter in the second half. His athleticism, his speed, his quickness as a big man was so impressive and imperative for KU to be better in that second half. And you look at plus minus, David Coit was the best at plus 12. Flory Bidunga was second on the team at plus 8 in the game. So he's defensive MVP for KU. But yeah, not a lot of great for KU in this one. All right, what's next for the Jayhawks? This episode is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook. The NFL playoffs are almost here, but it's not too late to get in on the regular season action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Because right now, new customers can finish the season strong with $250 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Not only can you bet on who will win the game, but FanDuel also has bets for which players will score a touchdown, how many points each team is going to score. You can get player props for the KU games, bet the over on Zeke Mayo points, right? And so much more. Visit FanDuel.com to join today. That is FanDuel.com for your chance at $250 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL and the Locked On Podcast Network. Finishing things up on this episode of Locked On Jayhawks, what is next for KU? Well, they're at UCF. It's a rare Sunday game, and this one becomes everything for KU, right? I mean, if you start 0-2 in Big 12 play when this is one of your more winnable weeks of the season, you have Arizona State on Wednesday, which you should win that one, although I guess with how things are right now, you can't take anything for granted. Then after that, it's at Cincinnati, who's a top 25 team, and it's on the road, and they spanked you in the Big 12 tournament. And then you have at Iowa State, which is both one of the best teams in the country, in the conference, and one of the toughest places to play. If you lose this game at UCF, there's a real chance you're going to be 2-3 or 1-4 through the first 5 games of the season. And Kansas is only 3-10 on the road in the Hunter Dickinson era. So that does not make you feel better about it. You remember last year, Kansas lost at UCF. That was not a good performance. And also, from what we know, after you lost at Missouri, when you were coming off a loss, and that was a rivalry, you came out of that one without any energy. So as easy it is for me to say, okay, well, maybe they'll come out more energetic after this performance. Last time that happened wasn't exactly the case. So it'll be interesting to see how KU responds. I think it'll be very interesting to see how Bill Self coaches the game, who the lineups are, who's getting the most run. Do things start to get bared down a little bit more? And I don't know what it's exactly going to look like for KU, but it feels like they're at a crossroads right now. How are they going to react from here? Because it certainly has not been a very good season so far for KU, especially compared to expectations. The good news is there is still time to figure it out, but you are running short on that time because we are, maybe when you're listening to this in the new year, we're about to be in the new year. And, I mean, there's only so much you can do once you get to like March, right? You have the Remy Martin example, but like that's a once in a lifetime type of thing that can happen. So you got to start figuring this thing out by the start of February. And we'll see if that starts on Sunday against UCF or if it is more of the same old. That'll do it for this episode of Locked On Jayhawks. You can find our show anywhere you get your podcast, including on our YouTube page where you can like and subscribe to the show. See you next time with LOJ.